I'm about to graduate from Marshall University with a bachelor's in sociology, and I have Asperger syndrome, which is high-functioning autism.
I'm a college student at Marshall University. I have Asperger syndrome.
I'm a student at Marshall University. I also have Asperger syndrome. Today we want to discuss Asperger syndrome as it relates to the high school experience.
As you watch this particular group of students enter the classroom, you may have noticed subtle differences between them. However, sometimes Asperger syndrome is referred to as a hidden disability because characteristics are not always obvious to the eye.
This can be confusing for teachers and peers. The challenges many students with Asperger syndrome face are often overlooked. Sometimes they're minimized based on preconceived notions. Could even be a lack of awareness or acceptance.
We hope to increase awareness in the challenges students with Asperger syndrome face in a classroom and school setting.
First, let's define Asperger syndrome and discuss some of the strengths and challenges many students with Asperger syndrome face. Asperger syndrome is an expression of autism that typically affects one's social awareness, sensory experiences, and other executive functions like time management and organization. As you can imagine, challenges in these areas can have a major impact on the classroom life of a person with Asperger syndrome. In the next few minutes, we will take a closer look at each of these areas and relate them to school success. Some barriers to school success can include social differences and challenges, nonverbal cues, conversation skills, the hidden curriculum.
Students with Asperger's, in terms of conversation skills, they might have a difficult time gauging other people's levels of interest or disinterest.
Communication differences, inflection, expressive delays, sensory differences and challenges, sight, sound, touch, taste, tactile, vestibular, proprioceptive.
I have a tendency to be able to hear very high frequencies or certain sounds will annoy me. Fluorescent lights, for example, the brightness of them and the color and the hue, along with the hum they give off, can wear on you, and it almost becomes like that's the only sound you will hear.
Cognitive or learning differences, processing verbal information, abstract versus literal thinking, and theory of mind.
Thankfully, there are a variety of teaching strategies and interventions available. Each can help minimize challenges and build new skills. For example, techniques like visual instruction, Carol Gray's social strategies, peer mentoring, and video modeling. These are all common approaches widely used in the classroom.
Social groups, peer mediation, theory of mind intervention, and other social supports can help students with Asperger's decode the sometimes overwhelming social cultures at school. Sensory integration therapy under the guidance of an occupational therapist can be very useful to help students manage the sensory difficulties in the classroom as well. The West Virginia Department of Education recently released a document of the best practices called Autism Spectrum Disorders, Services in West Virginia Schools, which you may find useful in your search for strategies and interventions.
As a high school teacher, you're expected to juggle many responsibilities throughout the school day. You may be feeling intimidated by the challenge of meeting the needs of your students with Asperger syndrome. You may also feel that you need more training in the specifics of how to create an environment that is supportive for students with Asperger syndrome. Those feelings are quite natural, and many teachers reach out for answers to their questions or concerns.
I have a student in one of my classes who can do all the work, but sometimes it seems like she just doesn't want to do the work. Is it wrong that sometimes I think she's just being lazy?
Maybe, but you'll have to look at things like this on a case-by-case basis. I'd say you have to know the student, like get to know the student, but at the same time, it could be that a student with Asperger's might know the answer. It's just they keep hitting some kind of block, and for some reason they just can't seem to answer the question.
One of my students with Asperger's enjoys being by himself. Should I include him with a group, or is he happiest by himself?
Many people assume that a student with Asperger's is a loner, when in fact they may have a deep desire to develop and maintain friendships. Teachers play a crucial role in helping students with Asperger syndrome develop appropriate, meaningful relationships with peers. Helping students strengthen their social network takes some focused intervention time on the part of the teacher, but this is time well spent. Peer mentoring is one way to utilize natural supports in a student's environment, and a good peer buddy can help a student with Asperger's manage challenging social, academic, or sensory challenges. Peer buddies are also natural supports in the prevention or redirection of bullying.
Once in a while we see the other students in the classrooms picking on students with Asperger's. We wonder if these students actually pick up on these subtle teasing, and do they understand it at all?
As a person who's been through teasing personally and been through a lot of bullying, both physical and verbal, you take almost everything very literally and seriously. People can tease you, and where a normal person would blow it off, a person with Asperger's will take it to heart. It really diminishes your work ethic, and you almost become no longer attentive in school. When you go to a teacher, we're going for help, and if you're going to sit there and we come to you and talk to you about you need to do something about it and make sure it doesn't happen again. And if we come to you again, you need to be even more firm and assertive than you were the last time, because that means it's still going on and we're still having problems with it. We come to you for help in a cry of desperation, and it almost hurts to do it sometimes. And I ran into the problem of teachers stopped caring. Teachers stopped doing things about it because they're like, oh, it's nothing. And it got worse and worse and worse, and I developed problems from it. I developed mental health problems. I fell into depression, fell into multiple horrible spells of just sadness and not wanting to even exist anymore. And as a teacher, I feel like it's your role to do everything in your power to protect people, your students, and especially people with disabilities, as we already feel less of a person because of our disability, Asperger's being a social disorder.
Supporting students with Asperger syndrome can be a complex task, as needs and supports can be highly individualized. Again, it is very natural to feel overwhelmed if you have not been through training that is specific to Asperger syndrome or autism spectrum disorders. However, the good news is there is likely someone in your school who is willing and able to collaborate with you to meet the needs of your students. We encourage you to reach out and access the knowledge of your special education or autism coordinators in your school or county, or even teachers that have attended the West Virginia Autism Teacher Academies.
It is also important to include your students in the planning and decision-making process about their education as often as possible. High school students are just a few short years away from entering into the world beyond public school and need the experience of advocating for their services and supports as much as possible.